Sean Pickett with Sales Integrity here. Thank you for listening to the Sales Integrity Podcast. I created a free course for you titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling. To claim your free course, just visit mastercomplexselling.com. Again, that's mastercomplexselling.com, or simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Again, that's SI as in Sales Integrity. So SI course, all one word with no space in between SI and course. Otherwise, you'll get an error message back. So simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Now let's jump into the podcast. Now let's chat with today's guest, Josh Silverstone. Josh, are you ready to share some wisdom with Sales Integrity Nation today?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Great. Let's get started. Josh, nobody can introduce you better than you, but what I will share with the audience is that you're the CEO and Pokerpreneur at Aces Raise. I was really excited to have you on today because it's a very unique perspective you bring to helping those in the sales profession. So given that nobody can introduce you better than you, let's have you take a moment to say hello to our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, and let us know how you serve the sales profession as an industry leader.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, thanks for having me on, and hello, everyone out there. My background is really over 10 years of experience in inside sales, outside sales, sales management, and sales consulting. And about 3.5 years ago, I went out on my own to start my own company and really using the game of poker to teach leadership skills and business development skills. So there's a lot of analogies and overlap and things that we can get into, but essentially taking the game of poker and breaking it down in a way that teaches sales in a fun and kind of engaging way that's a little different than you've maybe seen before.
Yeah, that's a very unique topic, and we were introduced obviously by a mutual connection, and I was real excited to talk to you because when she had presented to me your unique spin on how you help those in the sales profession through the game of poker and kind of the strategy that goes along with that, I was like, I got to have him on the podcast because I think this will be a very unique perspective that you're bringing to the table. So I look forward to diving into that, but before we do, I'm going to start off with the first question I ask all of my guests, and that question is this: how do you define sales integrity? As you know, I've named my company Sales Integrity, so I always ask my guests this. Integrity is different for everyone. So how do you define sales integrity, or what it means for a sales professional to demonstrate integrity while selling?
Sure. Well, quite simply for me, it's say what you do and do what you say. And I heard that from a mentor years ago, and I've really taken that with me. And I think how that kind of plays in the sales world, sales realm, sales process is, really being about how do I add value to this particular customer or client? Because the reality is, and although I say, say what you do and do what you say, the sales process is more about understanding them. But when you do come with a solution or an answer, because really that's what we are, we're problem solvers. We have to ask questions. We have to understand where they're coming from so that we can best serve them. So it has to come from an authentic place that you really do care, that you really are there to help, and to come with an authentic answer that really is representative of who you are and what you do.
So do what you say and say what you do. Keep congruent with that, and really that's authenticity demonstrated, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Great definition. So let's look at your topic. I'm just dying to dive into this. I'm sure the audience has the same question I do. What exactly is a pokerpreneur, Josh, and how does that affect those in the sales profession that are trying to improve their sales game?
Absolutely. There's a couple different ways we can go with this, and I'll share a couple. The first is, I think, being adaptive. So one of the keys to being a good poker player or being a good salesperson or just person in general is the adaptability aspect. And at the poker table, there's different types of players that you're going to come up against. So people that play loose, a lot of different hands, or tight, fewer hands, or that play more passively or more aggressively. And how you decide to play your hand and what bets to make are all contingent on the other person and the other people. So you have to be aware. You have to be focused. You have to see what other people are doing. You have to pay attention. And this is very true in the sales process as well. When you're sitting with a potential prospect, depending on where they are in their personality or their types, depending on which scale you use, maybe it's DISC or Myers-Briggs or something else, really being able to adapt your presentation, your pitch, your approach based on what is familiar and comfortable to them. That is really what it's all about. As the saying goes, people do business with people they know, like, and trust, and people know, like, and trust what is either similar to them that makes sense to them or something that they aspire to be. So I think adaptability is definitely one key thing that I always share. And one other thing I'll mention is the idea of knowing what opportunities to go after. So in Texas Hold'em, there's 1,326 different possible starting hands you could play. So that's a lot of different opportunities of hands that you can play. But the best players in the world, and this has been proven through studies and science, thanks to online poker and the number of hands that have been played, there was a study done of 500 million poker hands. And what it showed was not just that poker is a game of skill, that's been proven, but that it's a game of skill, and the best strategy is a tight, aggressive strategy. So in other words, you want to play hands, and this it relates to the sales process. You want to go after not all the opportunities out there, but a very focused few of opportunities. And Hold'em, or in Texas Hold'em or in poker, we're only playing 30% of all the starting hands that were dealt. And you can take that and apply that to the sales process and say, okay, can't go after every opportunity, but what are the ones that have the biggest upside, that might be the low-hanging fruit, and being really focused on, okay, I'm going to make sure this is really my target market that I can best serve. And if you take that approach, you won't waste as much time going after the wrong opportunities, and you also increase your closing rate on the back end because you're more focused on the places that you're supposed to be spending your time.
So thou shalt know thy numbers, right? In sales,
right.
You need, it's a numbers game, right? And you do need to know your numbers. So Josh, I took some copious notes there, and I want to unpack some of these things that you said. So let's go back here just a tad, then we'll end with the numbers there, because I think that's just huge as it relates to sales success and knowing your numbers. But one of the first things you talked about was adaptability, right? And that the strategy, really depends on the person or the people at the table. Right. And it could be, I took that a couple different ways. It could be strategy depending on your competition, because they may get a seat at the table too, and now you're competing with them. Right. You think of those around a poker table or those that you're competing with, but also maybe the prospective customers or customers that you're selling to as well, and that you're helping buy. You need to be adaptable and understand, where they're coming from as well. So does this adaptability apply to both competition and those that you're trying to help through your services and products?
Absolutely. I think the competition is going to affect the way you approach the situation, as well as the personality type of the particular prospect who's going to be making the decision. If there's somebody who is more of a marketing type of person, they probably like more stories, anecdotal things, versus a CFO type who wants more numbers and data-driven information. So being able to cater your particular message for who you're talking to is really key and really essential. So yes, and yes. I think all of the details and information you have about the situation is you can't treat each thing exactly the same. Although you have a process, you have to leave some flexibility and fluidity to it based on new information coming in, new details coming in that will help you make your presentation, your approach even stronger.
So this adaptability really helps you tailor your message, is what you're saying, depending on the audience.
Absolutely.
So one of our previous guests was an author named Stu Schlackman. He wrote the book 4 People You Should Know. And this just builds right upon Stu's point as well, because there's 4 different personality types. These are the 4 people. He aligns them with 4 different colors, and your messaging is going to be different based on that. So we broke that down, within his interview. So all this does is just builds upon that point and takes it to another level. And I love the analogy of playing poker, Texas Hold'em, the strategy, and then really adapting, and correlating that to sales and sales messaging and tailoring that message depending on who your target audience is. So that's great to hear. The next thing that you said that I'd like to talk a little bit more about is know, like, trust. And I'm a big believer in this, as are a lot of sales related author, speaker, trainers that are out there, that in reality, and I was just coaching someone before we jumped on our interview here, one of my coaching clients, and we were talking about the ideal client profile. And he was sharing with me an opportunity that he and his company are pursuing right now, pretty good size opportunity. And when we looked at the know, like, and trust, they're in the very early phases of pursuing this business. And I was just going through this exact same thing with them, that, keep in mind that although you're selling a complex technical product service solution in a business to business setting, you are selling to people, right? To senior executives and their buying team of influencers. You're leading a team pursuit sales cycle, so you have a whole different realm of personalities on your own team. But your job is really to match up the know, like, and trust factor there, between your team and their team. They're not going to do business with you, and especially trust you, with a large project that has high value and a high level of investment in it, unless they know, like, and trust you. So can you talk a little bit more about that as it relates to the Pokerpreneur strategy and mapping that to the overall sales process as it relates to teams hunting in packs, so to speak, and working with senior leaders and their buying team of influencers?
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up some great things there, and the reality is, like you said, people buy from people, although it is a B2B type of sale. So there's a bunch of tactics and things out there that you can do to build rapport. One thing from just a tangible that you can take away is the idea of mirroring. And I'm not sure if that's something that you teach or talk much about, but it can be even in the way that you sit down in your chair. Some people pop down, some people sit down slowly. I always like to see what they do and mimic that, if you will. So they kind of sit down, real hard, then I'll sit down the same way. If they lightly ease into their chair, I'll do the same. Sometimes where if they cross their legs, perhaps I'll even cross my legs or arms, or lean back in the chair or lean forward. Things like that, that just subtle little things that make it seem that just make you kind of stand out a little bit more and make it a little bit more comfortable and familiar. And again, it's not meant to be a tricky thing, but it's just one practical thing that you can do to make yourself a little bit more warm, or a way for them to even relate to you in a little better way that's subtle. Because so much of even the communication process, 7% of communication is the words, 38% is tonality and how you say it, and then the rest, 65%, is all in body language and things that you don't say. So from that perspective, I think there's a lot that you can do in just the body language aspect of it. And certainly, how true is that at the poker table, right? Not giving away tells and things of that sort too, looking at your cards, cracking a big smile or making a big sign. So being very cognizant of how you carry yourself physically is definitely a big aspect of it.
That's great. I was thinking of, I was hoping you'd bring up the phrase tells. I'm also thinking of, the phrase of poker face, or the term poker face, keeping your poker face type of deal. But Absolutely. It's really kind of the opposite now in sales, where you want to mirror them. You wouldn't necessarily want to do that unless you're really kind of screwing with someone at the poker table and having fun with your buddies, right? Do you want to mirror them or not? You're trying to fool people at the poker table, but you're trying to connect with people at the sales and buying table, right?
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. That's one way that poker is different than sales or in business in general, is that poker is a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. So although you're trying to figure out what they're doing so that you can basically do the opposite counter strategy, that's poker. Though in business and sales, it's figuring out what they do so that you can actually do the same thing, so that you can better relate and actually work together, partner together, and actually grow the business. So although what you're doing about understanding and adapting is the same, what the end in which you're trying to get to is actually a little bit different. So understanding people is definitely is the same across both, But in business, it's about how do I connect and work together with this person. In poker, it's a little bit more, how do I pick the things that they're doing incorrectly and exploit that to my benefit. So the end strategy, although the means to get there, understanding is there, but what you're actually trying to accomplish is very different.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So one final thing that I wanted to have you clarify and just elaborate on a little bit more is you had mentioned, as it relates to Texas Hold'em, I believe you said there's 1,326 possible starting hands that you can play. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I did capture that down. Good. And you also mentioned a study of 500 million poker hands that were played, and that the tight strategies, 30% of starting hands that are dealt is kind of where you want to be, right? Narrow your strategy down. If you fall within the realm of these 30% from a starting hands, then it makes sense to move forward. So this is all in the realm of knowing your numbers in sales, right? So can you shed some light between the correlation of poker and sales and just knowing your numbers? And really, I'm going to map this to, we have a saying at Sales Integrity, kind of our mantra, make your sales pop. And pop is naturally an acronym: preparation, organization, productivity. And we found that through our experiences, through some research we did of the best sales professionals we've worked with, that it always started with preparation. And if you're prepared, you tend to be organized. If you're organized, you tend to be productive. If you're productive, you're going to achieve your sales and income goals. In poker, preparing and knowing your numbers, that helps you create your strategy. So when you're at the poker table, you're organized, right? And if you're organized, then you're going to be productive and probably have a good day at the poker table. Is that kind of the correlation between the two? And can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good way of putting it. The best way I can explain it in poker, knowing your numbers, there's something called expected value. And this is one of the things I actually talk about a lot and teach in a lot of the leadership and decision-making courses that I do, using poker as the example. But in poker, there's something called, if you're familiar with a flush, a lot of times you're on a flush draw. So a very common example that comes up is whether or not it's worth calling a bet in order to make your hand. Because you don't have the best hand yet, but you're drawing to it. So there's a couple more cards to come that could give you the winning hand. And what you have to decide is whether or not it's worth it. So you have to look at a couple of things. You have to look at what the likelihood of making your hand is. So with 2 cards to come, I'll just tell you it's roughly 30%. Okay, so you have a 30% chance of making your hand. All right, well, so you only have a 30% chance of making it? It doesn't seem like it's a winner. Well, the reality is it depends. It depends on how big a bet you have to call. In other words, what is the risk that you actually have to put up? And then what is the size of the pot? In other words, the reward. So you can take this and break it down into a formula and say, okay, well, I know my likelihood of winning is X%. I know that I have to call X amount, so this is how much I have to put up. But if I do win, I'm going to win X or Y, and if I end up making my hand. So then, although 70% of the time you're going to lose, the 30% that time that you do, you're going to still come out ahead. So in business and in sales, it's kind of a similar idea. So you might know I have to reach out to X number of people, 10 people, in order to close 3 sales. I mean, 30% close rate for most B2B people is probably pretty darn good. So it's not about necessarily winning every single time, but it's knowing how many touches that you need, how many prospects you need, how many meetings that you need in order to get to where you're trying to go. And that's all set upon what your particular goals are. So, knowing that stuff before you show up so that you have a process in place is, I think, really critical and key. So I don't know if that 100% answered your question. Feel free to follow up if some of that didn't make sense.
It absolutely does, Josh. I think it's a great way to describe that. I mean, you need to know your numbers, and part of preparation is really creating that strategy. And that includes the numbers and sales forecasting, right? Yeah. And then once you have all that set, now you go into execute mode. It makes it much easier when you're purpose-driven, with what you're executing versus just flying by the seat of your pants and winging it. And that's really what I work on with my customers. I'm currently writing a book called Prospecting on Purpose, and everything we work on within our coaching programs is helping sales professionals prospect on purpose. And obviously, if you're going to prospect on purpose, you need to make sure you understand your numbers, you come up with your game plan before you go out on the field and start playing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that was a perfect description that you had outlined. So I really appreciate that. So as it relates to Pokerpreneur and just kind of this whole game of poker and mapping that over to sales, just curious, how did you get into this and when did you think, hey, this would be a great analogy to use within training salespeople and coaching salespeople to be more successful than they are today?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think it's been a kind of a long time building up to a degree. Like, I grew up playing tournament chess. So always around strategy and games, and then, played 3 different varsity sports in high school, and then got into poker in college, and then had this, as I mentioned, sales career. And being in the sales profession for as many years as I was, I saw some not so great company culture, and I said, all right, well, there's got to be a more fun and engaging way to kind of teach some of these things. And that's ultimately that thought, and taking something that I have a passion for, poker, in addition to kind of what I learned and knew through all those years of sales experience, and two just kind of naturally came together. So it was sort of my experience based on, in addition to wanting to follow my passion and do what I'm good at. And as I started on this entrepreneurial endeavor to help other entrepreneurs and go back and kind of work with some corporate entities as well, it was sort of a natural coming together that said, okay, well, I've always seen analogies. I always say, there's so many things you can learn from other things. And this was really just one other extension of that idea.
Well, it's a great analogy, and I'm fascinated by it. I think it's very intriguing. It'll keep the attention of the sales professionals that are out there, our audience, for sure, and especially if they play poker. I mean, if they don't, I think there's still a relevant correlation between game theory, poker strategy, and mapping that over to sales. I'm constantly talking about the game of complex technical selling. I'm an ex-athlete myself, and always that's how I got into sales. I really kind of created my game plan because I wanted my triangle offense. I'm a Bulls fan growing up in the Chicago area. For triangle offense for the sales game that I was about to embark upon, type of deal, right? So for selling, you got to make it fun. It's a game, it's a numbers game, it's a complex game, but the more you can make it fun and the more you can prepare, the better off you're going to be. So I think it's absolutely a relevant analogy. So let's shift gears here, Josh, and talk social selling, as that seems to be obviously a very hot topic these days. In the use of social technology such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and others has really taken the selling scene by storm. So given that, what is one social selling tip or technique that you would recommend to B2B sales professionals to either establish credibility or generate more leads?
Yeah. Well, I think for B2B in particular, I think LinkedIn, there couldn't be a better tool than LinkedIn. And so we can I can get into a little bit of the specifics with it now, but I think one of the best ways of using LinkedIn for prospecting, one, research is awesome. And you can get the upgraded one where you can actually send emails to people. But one of the best tools that I think utilize, and I've been doing this for a long time now, is using LinkedIn to see who you are connected with, who's connected to somebody that you want to get connected with. So I said that was a lot of connected, but that's sort of the LinkedIn theme, I think. But if you're looking to reach out to somebody and they're not a first connection to you, but they're a second connection, who is it that you can reach out to that can make an introduction for you? So I think that has got to be one of the best things that you can do, as opposed to just calling somebody or reaching out cold. To have a warm introduction because they are a mutual connection is key, especially for the B2B world where everyone's busy. It's hard to get in touch, and not to say that it won't work any other way, but that warm intro and knowing, hey, I can see exactly what my road in is, so to speak, is just critical.
Yeah. And that may, first of all, LinkedIn, it has just a wealth of knowledge. So you actually have visibility right into people's networks that you're connected to. And by doing some careful research, and creating accounts, and with Sales Navigator, their latest version, kind of their CRM light version of LinkedIn, you can create account lists and lead lists And when you look at that, then you could see who you're directly connected to, the mutual connections, kind of do that in reverse a bit, what you've outlined. And then it's a matter of asking, right? And this may seem like of course, that seems like an obvious thing. Everybody knows that we can see connections of people that you're connected to. However, the studies will show that most sales professionals are not asking for those connections. They're not outwardly asking their connections for referrals into these other connections. There was a study recently conducted. I don't have the exact source of who it was, but I'm doing a lot of research for the book, of course. And it was something like over 80% for sure. I think it's like 87 or 86% of customers specifically said they would provide referrals if they were asked. But only 11% of salespeople, and I know that is the right one, 11% of salespeople actually ask for referrals. Yeah. So there's a huge gap there where people just assume, yeah, that information's there, but are they actually taking action in doing it, right? And asking people for those connections. So that's a good reminder, if anything, that, hey, there's a wealth of knowledge just sitting there, a lot of potential leads sitting there. You just have to ask for it and come up with an approach to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and thank you for adding that. I think that's definitely a key. It's kind of I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, so it's like anyone can just take a reservation, but it's really the keeping the reservation. Right? So you're right. So you might have the knowledge or the information in front of you, but it's really what are you going to do with it and acting on it, which is really what's going to churn things over. So absolutely good addition.
That's exactly right. You'll never go wrong with me with the Seinfeld. love Seinfeld. Awesome show.
Nice.
Great. So if social selling is all the rage these days, Josh, then its chief rival, I'm sure you'll agree, that is equally polarizing is the tactic of cold calling. So let me ask you, is cold calling dead? And if not, where do you believe cold calling fits into the lead generation mix these days?
So, I don't think it's dead. I think I kind of tipped my hand a little bit, pun intended, that I think that you can kind of use both together in the way I just kind of described, is using LinkedIn to figure out, okay, here's the person I want to talk to and here's the person that can connect me. So you're not getting in cold. You really are. It's more of a warm lead than just a random cold call with nothing at all. That said, if you are going to do cold calling without an introduction, because maybe there isn't someone there, you can still use the research from LinkedIn and other things in order to make it a warmer call. So instead of just showing up and saying, hey, I'm looking for the guy that's in charge of XYZ thing, like, know exactly who it is that you're calling for. Like, that information should be available. And if you can find out who they are, see some, if there's a common interest, or maybe they went to the same school as you, or, maybe they are part of the same LinkedIn group as you, something that you can establish some common ground. So you're not just some, random person calling some other random person. You still got to make it customized and unique to them. So if you're going to cold call without getting the lead, I think you still need to do your homework first before just dialing and hoping for the best, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, the cold part of cold call, it should be dead, right? The days of a manager handing you a list and saying, okay, call into these accounts, and you not doing any research and just picking up the phone and smiling and dialing and trying to navigate past gatekeepers, or worse yet, trying to figure out who the actual individual is, right? Asking the gatekeeper, who would I speak to for this? I mean, those days are dead, right? With the internet that's come along, buyers are more informed. Lots of studies show that they're roughly 2/3 through the sales cycle by the time they raise their hand and reach out to a salesperson. But you could be proactive. So I think it's more proactive outbound calling combined with emailing, combined with the research that you do to make sure you know who you're targeting, right? That's that preparation. And then you're calling in more informed because, yes, they have more information about us, about our products and services, about the challenges, issues, and goals that they're facing and what solutions are out there. But on the flip side, sales professionals have more information at their fingertips about the buyers and how to connect with them and what interests them. And so if you call in, truly cold call in there without doing that research, you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but you're doing obviously the prospective customers a disservice as well, right?
100%. Absolutely.
Great. Well, Josh, we're nearing the end of our time together today. So that means one thing. It's time for the sales cycle. Now, the sales cycle is not only a process that all sales professionals have to manage, but it's also the name of our lightning round, where I ask questions in rapid fire format and look for quick answers from our guests. So to make this fun, I'm going to time how fast you can get through the sales cycle, and then each future guest will see if they can achieve the top spot for getting through the sales cycle in the least amount of time. Obviously, that's something that all sales professionals would like, is a shorter sales cycle, right? So currently, Josh, one of our previous guests, Stu Schlackman, who I mentioned earlier, he set the benchmark with a 1 minute and 55-second sales cycle. So that's the time to beat, my friend.
All right.
Think you could do it?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, I want you to keep one thing in mind, though. For our audience sake, we do want to balance speed with value. So no just one-word answers and not elaborating a little bit on them, right? They got to be able to glean some value so they could at least learn one thing new that they can go off and apply or research to apply for themselves. That sound fair?
Sounds good.
Okay, so given that, we're going to get started. I'll let you know when I start the clock here. There's 7 questions, so we're going to go through 7 questions. And then once I stop the timer, when you're done with the 7th question, I'll let you know whether you won or not, whether you beat that time. Okay?
Cool.
All right, we're going to get started in 3, 2, 1. Clock has started. Question number 1. Name a specific technology or tool you use for identifying and researching target market prospects.
Yeah, so I think I asked or answered this in terms of LinkedIn, and I got to stick with it because I really think that it's such a great tool. And you mentioned Sales Navigator, kind of the upgraded form of that. I think both of those in conjunction with each other in the way that previous answered are both really, really great tools.
Great. Question number 2. What is the best method to initially get the attention of and connect with your target market prospects?
Okay. And I think using the approach that you mentioned before as well, getting somebody else that already has a connection with the person you're looking to talk to make an introduction for you to get in. So that way they're expecting it. You already have a little bit of rapport, and you're not just coming in completely cold. They're expecting the conversation, and you're more teed up will definitely set you ahead.
So getting a referral and a facilitated intro. Great.
Absolutely.
Question 3, what method do you use to consistently stay top of mind if your prospects aren't ready to buy just yet?
So writing articles, creating videos, and then sharing that mostly through email marketing. I used Infusionsoft, and there's a lot of different email systems you can use, but drip email marketing is one of the ways, in addition to using social media to drip out content as well, is the process that I use.
Great. Question number 4, what sales process methodology do you use to manage opportunities through the sales cycle?
So I think I use a hybrid, but the 4 key components I think you need to know are knowing who the how the decision making works, whether it's an individual or as part of a team. If there is a budget, what the budget is, and what the decisions around the budget could be. If there's a need. So if they're actually looking for what you're selling, and then also and probably the most critical part, the urgency, understanding within the process, how big of a problem or issue is it that they're looking to solve? So are they willing to spend the dollars to address that need? I think just in a very quick way, those are kind of the 4 things that need to be checked off before you can really move things forward at all.
So it's a good old trusty BANT model: budget, authority, need, timing. Right?
Yeah.
Question 5, how do you define the concept of closing a sale?
For me, I think it's once you've already established your credibility and understand those 4 components that we talked about before, or just a second ago. Once you have that defined, the closing a sale aspect of it is just moving things forward from there. So based on the fact that they need something that you have the solution for them that's going to come in right. And then the next step would be, so that's kind of how I look at closing the sale. It's, okay, how do we take it to the next, how do we get this from here and get to the next level, next step?
Great. Coming down the home stretch here. Question number 6, how do you know when it's time to close a sale for any given opportunity?
I always look for buying questions. Real quickly, I was in a sales meeting just a couple weeks ago, and they asked a question, well, can we charge this through our system and then cut you a check? That's generally a pretty good buying question, that they're pretty interested in what you're selling. So look for buying questions.
Great. And final question, Question number 7. What is your best advice for sales achievers to improve their closing ratio?
I think one of the best things to do is 1, practice, and 2, continue to learn. And it's a combination of both, because you can practice the wrong thing and reinforce the wrong activities and things that you can do. But if you're always learning and adapting and tweaking as you kind of learn and apply, I think is the best way just to get the best results in the long run.
All right. You have just closed the deal and completed the sales cycle. Congrats, Josh.
Oh, thank you.
You ready for your time?
What do I got?
4 minutes and 9 seconds.
4 minutes. Oh man, I didn't do very good.
It flies by, doesn't it? So it was interesting because Jim flew through in like just over 2 minutes, and then Stu comes along and does 1:55, and it's just amazing. But they were able to add a lot of value. But there is no shame in 4 minutes, I can tell you that, because within 4 minutes and 9 seconds there, you dropped a lot of value bombs there. And I think a lot of people can learn from that and apply it and just see the method that you walk through. Someone who's methodical and looking at strategies such as poker and mapping that over to selling, I think they get a good sense that you're doing pretty well in the game of sales, right?
Cool.
Great. All right. Well, Josh, let's wrap up the show with your number 1 piece of advice for complex technical B2B sellers.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to share with people is, and it might sound a little counterintuitive, but to focus on the process, not just the results. Because there's so many things that are outside of your control, and really you want to focus on the things that you can control. And this is a big poker idea too, because sometimes you can make the right decision and still lose. You can get all in with pocket aces versus pocket 2s when you're an 80% favorite to win. Well, that still means 2 out of 10 times you're going to lose. So when those type of things happen, whether at the table or in a sales process, or a competition beats you out or what have you, don't be so hard on yourself. It's a long-term game. It's a continuous game, and just focus on trying to do the right things, making the right decisions in the moment. And although you're conscious and cognizant of trying to get the close and trying to get the sale, that you don't let that be to your detriment, and just continue focusing on what you're doing, trying to get better at the things that you're doing, regardless of the immediate outcome that you're getting.
So pocket aces, you have an 80% chance to win. Is that right?
If you get all in pre-flop aces versus really any other hand, you're typically going to be you are an 80% favorite roughly.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it. I think it's a great perspective, Josh. You still have a 20% chance that you're going to lose. So 2 out of 10 times you still will lose, even though you're in the best position, almost the best position to win there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's part of the game. It's part of the game.
That's great parting advice. So how can people best get a hold of you?
A couple of different ways. Certainly on all the different social media channels, LinkedIn in particular, Josh Silverstone on LinkedIn. And our website is acesraise.com, acesraise.com, and my email is josh@acesraise.com.
Great. So aces, ACES, acesraise.com.
Yep, that's it.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today, Josh. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of the sales achievers out there who took the time to listen to today's interview. I appreciate you as well, and look forward to everyone applying some of the sales wisdom ideas that Josh provided during today's interview. So now let's wrap up today's episode with a few quick reminders. All right. Reminder number 1, if you haven't signed up for our free 7-day video email course titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling, then you should do so right away. Go ahead and visit mastercomplexselling.com. Again, it's mastercomplexselling.com. Reminder number 2, if you want to ask a question and have me feature that on the podcast to answer your question, then just send an email to asksean@salesintegrity.com. Again, it's Ask Sean, and I spell it SEAN. So Ask Sean at salesintegrity.com. Number 3, if you haven't already done so, please rate the show. If you've been listening a few times and you get a sense of what the show is about and you feel comfortable, I greatly appreciate a 5-star rating and a quick 1 to 2 sentence review. You could do so on iTunes. Just search for the show and then click the ratings and reviews and go ahead and just add it there. And then final reminder, if you haven't already joined one of our 2 B2B Tech Sales Professionals group, you could do so on either Facebook or LinkedIn. Just go ahead and search for B2B Tech Sales Professionals, and it'll pop up and you can just join right there. So once again, thank you for listening to today's episode. Go out there today and help your customers buy what they want, what they need, and what benefits them. And most importantly, go out there and make it a great day.